Hello, good morning, America, and good evening, Slovenia. My name is Ana Maria, and I hope that you can all hear me well and see me well. Please send something in the chat so that I know that everything is working as it should be. Okay, thank you so much. So without further ado, I would like to welcome everybody, all the guest speakers, all the participants for joining us here today on the first module of the project Entrepreneurship in New Reality. I would like to thank you all for joining us here. And it is really a privilege to launch this first webinar that is going to be entitled to entrepreneurship. And before we start and we give this floor to the guest speakers and moderators for today, I would just briefly like to explain to all what entrepreneurship in new reality is actually about and why we are doing it. So entrepreneurship in new reality is a series of 10 webinars on 10 actual topics that are covering this new reality. In all of the webinars, we're gonna feature more than 30 guest speakers coming both from the United States and from Slovenia, and they're gonna share their professional know-how, their ideas, and their perspective so that we can connect the spheres from both sides of the ocean. The ENR project, as we call it shortly, was created by GEA College, Faculty of Entrepreneurship, and is implemented in cooperation with the United States Embassy here in Slovenia. Of course, we are also thankful to all our partners, both on the national perspective and international partners that are helping to make this project and this idea a reality. But what actually is GEA College? GEA College is a modern business center that has been educating entrepreneurs and empowering individuals with entrepreneurship mindset for 30 years so far. And why are we actually doing this entrepreneurship in new reality project? In this time of the pandemics, when we are trying to struggle this new reality, this new reality is basically changing the way that we live, and it's changing the way that we do business, the way that we grow and try to work together as entrepreneurs or as business individuals. And this is why we are starting this series of webinars on these important topics being entrepreneurship, innovation, promotion of trade, economic reforms, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, youth engagement, and transatlantic cooperation, so that we can all connect. Right now, this is the moment when we need to share new ideas, share new perspectives, so that we can grow together as entrepreneurs and as individuals. And right now, I can see that we have almost 90 participants here today, and this is actually a confirmation that these topics are actually important, so that we need to discuss about them. So without further ado, I would like to thank you again for joining us, and I hope that you will enjoy not just today's webinar, but also all 10 of them, and that you will gain new knowledge so that you can grow both as entrepreneurs or as individuals. So without further ado, on today's module, we will talk how can we as entrepreneurs really grow in the new reality. And I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Mr. Andrej Šolinc, who is joining us here as a lifelong entrepreneur himself and a CEO of CEED Slovenia, a modern community and organization that is trying to grow and help Slovenian entrepreneurs. Andrej, are you here with us?
Yeah, hi everybody.
Hello, Andrej. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ana Maria. So welcome everybody. We have an hour ahead of us, and our goal today is that we talk about something useful for you, and we'll try to solve at least one small problems you entrepreneurs have right now. And it's easy to talk in theory about problems, but today we have a few great guests, and I hope we'll get some nuggets of knowledge out of them. So they'll be talking from their experience as people directly. So we'll be as direct and as useful as possible for you. So So Anna Maria said, growing in new reality, the challenges entrepreneurs have. And right now, I think one of the biggest questions is what is a new reality? Because if you're following news and articles, and also I talk a lot to entrepreneurs. So worries about pandemic seem to be over, not truly over, but everyone is talking about the near future. So what will happen in the next weeks or months, and we'll start with that discussion. So what we believe at CEED is that every problem that entrepreneurs have was already solved by someone somewhere, and we just need to share this knowledge. So we have some great sharers today here with us. So Troy, I will start with Troy Henikoff. He has a really impressive CV. He's a managing director currently of Math Ventures. He's a mentor with Techstars. He co-founded many enterprises, and he'll tell more about himself a bit later. Bruce Leech, he's a Coleman Entrepreneurship works at the Coleman Entrepreneurship Center at DePaul University, or heads it. And he founded a very successful company, which employed over 400 people. Also co-founder of different startups. I think everybody knows Jure Knez. He's one of the founders and CEO of Dewesoft, one of the most successful tech companies right now in Slovenia. Also president of the Slovenian Business Club. And last but not least, Jaka Vadnjal from GEA College. He's a professor. He was a dean at some point, but also he's an experienced entrepreneur himself, and also a manager. He was at one point he was a managing director of Salon. So yeah, we have an interesting panel, and I would like to start with the first question, and that is so. Troy, maybe with you. In the past year, in 2020, your business and personal life, what happened? What did you learn? What was your journey like?
Well, the journey was incredible. The year 2020 started out great, and then very rapidly it went from all things normal to all hands on deck and panic in the second week of March for us here in the US. So Friday, March 13th, I remember the date, Friday the 13th, was when we shut down our office at Math Venture Partners. I drove about 10 hours to go pick up my daughter, who was at university in Canada, and bring her home so that we could be safe. My wife brought our son home from his high school, and we locked down personally. But from a business standpoint, as an investor, so we're a venture capital firm. We have a portfolio of about 50 companies that we've invested in. I thought, oh, working from home, it's going to be easy. There's no time for commuting. There's no meetings. I'm going to have all this time. It's going to be very easy. It turned out to be one of the hardest couple of months of my investing career because I was on Zoom calls nonstop with founders, 12 hours a day, trying to help them figure out where they were in the world and what they were going to do. We had some companies that had what I call COVID tailwinds. The fact that COVID had happened and people were adopting technology solutions faster. So think about Zoom. Zoom expanded incredibly fast. I'll speak for the US. In the US, food delivery expanded incredibly fast because everybody wanted food delivered to them, right? There were a bunch of industries. Remote education expanded incredibly fast. So we had some companies that had to figure out how quickly do I hire? How much should I spend in order to take advantage of this opportunity? We had other companies on the other side of the market where COVID was very negative to them. So if they were supporting retail or they were supporting restaurants. And so we had to figure out how much do I cut back because we needed to save that capital to have enough runway. And so there was a lot of triage going on in those first 2 months, and it was incredibly stressful. It turned out that in the end, there was a dip in the market, there's a dip in all kinds of things, but we are just at right now, so it's January, we're preparing our portfolio report to our investors for the end of the year. And while not every company came back, the portfolio as a whole ended up performing very well. We had some big winners, we had a couple that are challenged, but overall, the portfolio did quite well. And so I think that's a combination of how the cycle has evolved, and it's a testament to the tenacity of the entrepreneurs and some of the hard decisions that they had to make. And if I give you one lesson learned from this process, is that when you realize that you need to make cuts and you realize that you need to extend your runway, I philosophically believe most companies, if you think about an airplane, will take off if they have a long enough runway, but many fail because the runway is too short. They run out of capital before they've taken off. That the ones who cut more than they thought were in a much better place. It's always easy to realize, oh, I let too many people off, I cut too deep, I can start adding people. And when you start adding people, your existing people have a feeling of optimism because they see, oh, we're growing again. But if you didn't cut deep enough and you needed to make a second set of cuts and do more layoffs, they feel depressed and bad. And so the one piece of advice is when you do need to make changes, when you do need to make layoffs and cut more than you think you have. It's much easier to add back than it is to cut a second time.
Oh, thank you very much. So, Bruce, how about you?
Yeah. So, yeah, that same week Troy mentioned, my date was March 11th. We had a group of students on a yellow school bus taking them on a tour of the startup scene in Chicago. We call it Venture Crawl. We actually partnered with Loughborough University in London. And so they started off the morning showing us kind of a startup incubator in London. And then we visited 1871, where Troy has an office, and 2112, which is a music creative arts incubator, and M Hub, which is a maker space, and then one of our alums who started a very successful company. And all I can remember sitting on that school bus with 30 students was my phone blowing up, and it looked like the world was coming to an end. Universities were starting to shut down. It was just, we're trying to keep a happy face on, and students are wondering what in the heck's going on. And we're elbow bumping everybody because nobody wanted to shake hands, and it was a crazy time. And of course, that coming weekend, I live in downtown Chicago, and there's this amazing event called St. Patrick's Day, and the bars were packed. It was nuts. I mean, with all this bad news in the air, they certainly didn't stop them from downing a few pints of Guinness. And then the mayor and the governor basically just slammed everything down that following Monday. And we're still in Chicago anyway. The restaurants are still all closed. We're doing our best at putting tents on the sidewalk. Fortunately, we've had a fairly mild winter so far, so they've been able to get away with it. But 2 years ago, we had the polar vortex, and I don't know what it is in Celsius, but it was 30 below Fahrenheit. Actually, I think that's the point where Celsius and Fahrenheit actually come together again. That's how messed up it was. And so anyways, for us at DePaul, it's been tough. And I'm sure all of you, and I have a 10-year-old at home, have dealt with both the remote learning from a parent perspective and the remote learning from a faculty perspective. There have been some benefits of remote learning, the ability to bring people into the classroom via Zoom that maybe wouldn't be available in person. But for the most part, I don't think online learning is going to completely take over in-person learning. Our students have constantly told me they want to be back in the classroom. It might have been fun for the first month in March. Actually, fun's probably the last word, but it was novel to roll out of bed, flip on your computer, and you're in class. So the novelty of that wore off by April and May, and now they're just slugging through a really ugly January in Chicago with the weather and the temperature. And while we're rolling out the vaccines, there's still a couple tough months ahead, and everybody's trying to, play it safe. So it's been a real up and down period. We're hopeful that in the fall we'll be back in the classroom, but we're also going to leverage some of the technology that we learned in this remote period. So if I want to have Troy in one of my classes, but he's on the West Coast, I'll bring him in on a Zoom call and throw him in the classroom, and, we'll get the best of both worlds going
I'll
forward.
be there.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Well, right.
Yeah.
So, we're taking the best of this opportunity. Hopefully we can slug out the next couple of months and get back to, I don't even want to use the word normal, back to whatever the next reality is. So thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. That's actually what we're discussing today. Just tell me, so do you think that if the first day after students get back to the classrooms, if you put Troy on Zoom, how they react?
Why are you throwing Zoom at us again?
Exactly.
They'll probably throw up on the Zoom call, but the point is still bringing some content into the classroom that might not otherwise be available. It'll certainly be more accepted than it was, a year ago as an alternative tool. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Jure, how about you? How was your year?
Well, it was definitely much different than previous years. That's for sure. So after a few longer trips in February, coming back from India in March, everything stopped. We stay at home. The kids, I have 4. They stayed homeschooling. But I have a little bit different experience with that because when I said at the end of the year, at the end of 2020, when it was obvious that the school will not reopen at the beginning of this year, I said to my kids with real sadness, I need to inform you that the school will stay closed. And they were just like, yes, let's do it from home. So they kind of enjoyed being back at home. Of course, they are more than, they are not alone. They are quite few. So actually, from the business perspective, it was a challenging year, but it was also a rewarding year because of the way how our company is organized with the rewarding system, with the ESOP. When the government more or less stopped everything, when the business travel stopped, we gave the opportunity that the people could stay at home if they would not feel safe. But they all said that they know that we need to continue, we need to push forward. So the R&D teams, they collected everything on Friday, and then on Monday the work normally continued from home. The production teams, they will split. We organized the safety gear, and we did not stop for a single day. And this passion which was built, I believe, over the years, when you are investing in the mentality, in the vision, in the somehow to bring the idea to the people that they work for themselves. That all turned out really great for us. And then also, I think what was for me very nice to see is how the community reacted. So we live in the, let's say for the US standards, we live in the small village of 15,000 people. And for us, this is the 8th biggest city in Slovenia, not including Cleveland, which is much bigger in terms of population of Slovenes. But the people kind of really stood together, helped each other, and to see all this working together, and the passion of the people trying to help each other was simply amazing. So for me, on one side, it was of course a tragedy. We have seen many tragedies, but on the other side, we have seen also good side of the people, which you don't see that much in the normal times.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, one of Andrej Šolinc from the company 3FS so mentioned a couple of months ago that right now the entrepreneurs are burning their social capital they have with their workers and business partners and customers, and it's nice to hear that you're doing fine. And Yeah, thank you. Jaka, how about you? How was your 2020?
Well, mine was obviously also interesting. I stopped my work at the bank just the end of December 2019, and I was sure at that time that I would start on my own, working as a kind of freelance consultant. My plan was, which I fulfilled, that I will take a month or so off, so January and let's say February, including nice skiing vacation in Italy, and then I would slowly, start working on a couple of projects which were kind of already arranged. And then, the famous dates like Friday, March 13th. Probably everybody has his or her own story. I had to evacuate two of my kids, one from London, the other from Gran Canaria, who was there as students on exchanges. And eventually on March 16th, the whole family, which has not lived together for the last 6 or 7 years, was again in one room, which was kind of a new dynamics or old dynamics back into the family. Well, as far as business is concerned, it was not that well as I expected, but it was simply different. One, let's say, a good thing that happened to me is that already end of February, I started working with a tech company, which was, so they work, they're actually 3 locations. One is here in Slovenia, the other is in Serbia, the third one is in Baltics. And working with these guys, I realized that remote kind of cooperation is not a science fiction, and that it really works. And I was included in a couple of teams. So I realized that, probably everybody of us has been on hundreds or thousands of badly organized and managed meetings. And meetings are really time burners. And what typically happens is that in Slovenia, at least half of participants are late, and then you take care of the coffee and everything else, and half of the time goes by. And I realized, thanks to these guys who included me in their teams, because I'm rather old school and prefer meet live, that actually remote work, cooperating over Zoom and platforms, may be much more efficient because you don't lose too much time on small talk and stuff like this. The bad thing of my business side was that I was actually in discussion, had even couple of agreements signed on how to help people on positive things, on expanding their business, raising capital, getting them more finance from banks and everything else. And a lot of this stopped because people felt, well, in these times of uncertainty, I would not, expand my business. Let's wait. What shall happen? A lot of them had to cut. A lot of them had to, send people home and bring them back and stuff like this. From this side, I was happy. I have to take care only for my salary, and I can only fire myself, which I will not. And even the company I worked before, they had layoffs because of the COVID. They closed a couple of outlets. They let people go. So I, in a way, me as a human being, as a manager, in a way, letting people go was always the harder thing I had to do. So I kind of ran away from this not nice action, which you sometimes have to take. Then things looked like they will pick up. Summer was good, but again, summer we're not very enthusiastic to work, so summer was more for vacation. And then autumn, again, lockdown. So yeah, I think I and also my clients who still faithfully wait for me for better times are there. I'm positive that next year would be better. But what I see as a positive outcome of this 2020 is that quite many of my clients started to think in a way that, okay, times will be different. Crisis is coming, but why don't we turn this into an opportunity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I just pick
Sure, go ahead.
the conversation from this part? And I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we have to be a bit
That's fine.
careful
That's
about
fine.
the time. Yeah. So you mentioned, all of you mentioned that. So we all remember March the 13th, and Troy, you actually said that. So you worked with a lot of companies, and some of them. So it was stressful at the beginning, but some of them caught the COVID tailwind, right? And some of them actually burned or had different problems. So right now, it was kind of similar in Slovenia. And the question right now the entrepreneurs are asking, or maybe everybody, especially parents who have small children in schools, are asking, so when and how is this going to end? But so we cannot predict the future, and I think nobody can. But right now, so some companies profited from this past year, and some lost their business completely, and some are struggling and waiting. But most of them are wondering. So let's say everybody's asking when can we continue? So this is when is one question, right? And what happens until then? A lot of entrepreneurs are saying that they're just waiting for everything to open, and we'll be back in the 2019 level again. So what will happen right after the end of the lockdown, and how the business will change in the long term? So these are really open questions, but I'd really like to have your view on them. So maybe Troy, can we start with you?
So I think there's a problem with the question and the way you posed it, because the way you posed it was, when is it going to end, and when can I get back to normal? And I think that the good entrepreneurs are people who want to be in control of their own destiny and have figured out how to change what they're doing to take advantage of the opportunity. Let me give you a very short story of a real company in Chicago. So there was this company in Chicago that was providing a software platform that was helping daycare centers get their little kids, so these are young kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, to and from daycare so that the daycare center could do more business. And specifically, if you're a parent with 2 working parents, you may not have time to drive your kid to the daycare center, and you don't you can't put a 3-year-old in a taxi cab or in an Uber by themselves. That's, you certainly couldn't do that. So you end up having to find another solution and have a nanny or someone come to your home. And so this company had a platform where they said, well, wait a minute, we'll use the existing daycare teachers as the drivers because they're already trusted people who take care of my kid all day. We'll give them a little platform with a mobile app. And then when you need to get your kid to daycare, you hit a button, the teacher comes and picks it up. Of course, you'd give your child to the teacher. You do that anyway. The teacher drives them. The teacher gets additional revenue. The parent is happy, and the daycare center gets more revenue because they have more children coming to their facility. It was a great business until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, their business went from growing rapidly to zero because all the daycare centers got shut down. But instead of just saying, oh, well, that's what happened to me, the CEO was awesome, and she took control, and she said, wait a minute, the technology that I've built isn't about delivering children to daycare centers. It's actually logistics management. And there are a bunch of restaurants who have a very similar problem. They previously had everybody come to them to eat, dine in. They now need to do delivery. They don't have delivery drivers. They're going out of business. They're gonna turn away their wait staff who no longer have jobs. But I could use this same platform. Instead of teachers picking up children, it's wait staff delivering meals. And now all of a sudden, I went from a restaurant that had never done delivery before to having a fully functional delivery, which means I can sell for the restaurant's perspective, I can sell more food. From the wait staff's perspective, I have a job and I get paid to do something, otherwise I'd be out of work. And from the consumer's perspective, I get to order food from my favorite restaurant. And that's an example of someone, an entrepreneur, a true entrepreneur who took, what's the expression? We're going to make lemonade out of lemons. Well, they took a bad situation and she turned it into a positive situation. And so what I love is the entrepreneurs who have taken this and turned what looks like a big problem into a real opportunity. And so I'm more focused on how do we take advantage of where we are today than saying I'm just going to wait until everything gets better.
Troy, yeah, can I be a bit provocative here maybe? So yeah, some of them actually they managed to change their business, and some of them are right are successful. But right now, if let's say a business, do you think it's too late to make such a change, because everybody's waiting for just a couple of months, quote unquote, for the pandemic to be over, and they're just thinking, so yeah, let's just wait a bit and then everybody will be back to normal. So what about those kind of companies?
Well, I don't think it's ever too late to make a change. I think it would have been better to make a change much earlier. We've seen lots of, so that the most of our businesses in the software business, right? Software wasn't negatively affected because most white collar could work from home. I'm just as productive, maybe more productive working from home than I was working from 1871 that Bruce referred to. However, many of our companies do serve markets that have been problematic. So we have companies that serve restaurants. Restaurants have been challenged for sure. But if you look at how restaurants have changed, they've all figured out how, at least in the US, they figured out how to do curbside pickup. They figured out how to do delivery. They figured out, and these are restaurants that never did it before. Some of the fanciest restaurants in Chicago, literally the fanciest restaurants in Chicago that you used to have to make reservations 6 months in advance, 9 months in advance to get into. I'm thinking of like Alinea for those of you who know Chicago. You can now do curbside pickup at Alinea. You can order, it's expensive, but you can order a meal and get it and have curbside pickup.
Cheaper to
They
buy the
never would
car
have dreamed they would have done that.
It's cheaper to buy a
Okay, Troy.
car and deliver it yourself, Troy.
Yeah.
But they've stayed open and they've stayed
They
in
have.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Troy,
So I don't think it's
follow-up
ever too
question.
late to change. I think that good entrepreneurs are always looking for opportunities, and that's what separates the good from the great, and that we should be focused on how do we take advantage of what we have today and not be sitting back and waiting. Well, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, who knows, there could be another wave. I want to take advantage of where I am today.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So, and what do you think about? So maybe Bruce, you mentioned how things changed at the way how you're teaching or how the teaching is done. So, do you think that after? So right now you adapted, but do you think these changes will stay after the reopening of the school? So after everybody gets back to the classroom. So I'm sure it's not going to be day one. That everybody will still prefer to use Zoom, but what about after half a year? So do you see that ways going back to normal or staying like they are now or somewhere in between?
Yeah, well, I'll address that question. Then I want to piggyback on something Troy said. The education, I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think there's going to be more of a blended model going forward. I think a lot of our students at DePaul are first generation college and they're putting themselves through school. So a lot of them are working a 40-hour week and going to school. So I totally appreciate that. Last quarter, we were totally asynchronous. So there was no live classes. And a lot of the students, I put them in teams so that I could connect with them individually as a group. And a lot of those calls were at 8 and 9 o'clock at night because the students were working 8 to 5. And I said, I'll meet you at midnight. I don't care. But it showed me an appreciation for them having more flexibility to work full time and then, somehow cram 4 classes in at night. This quarter, we do have what we call a hybrid modality. So this afternoon, I have an hour and a half live Zoom lecture where they have to be available just as if they were in class. But I got some of these kids hiding in a broom closet at work doing the class because they had to take a late lunch break. And so they're really trying to balance all that out. So I think where we're going to be in the fall is that maybe there'll be more online classes. but they do want that interaction that I mentioned earlier. So we'll have, you know, maybe 2 classes. Typically our students take 4 classes, maybe 2 will be in person and 2 would be online, where in the past it might be all in person, or at least 3 in person and 1 online. I want to shift a second off the back of what Troy said. And I kind of mentioned this in our pre-call. You know, entrepreneurs deal with change all the time. To sit around and wait for anything, I think is a death knell. Now, I wouldn't have wished the pandemic to be this severe to all of our business models, but it's just another bump in the road. You just have to figure out how to shift your model to be successful. And I don't want to be unsensitive that some businesses, and I'll just use restaurants for an example, it's really tough. I mean, the ones in Chicago that had kind of a quasi outdoor porch they could, you know, close in are kind of open in that porch, but there's others where you just don't, you know, you're right on the street. You can't throw it, and some have put a tent out there. But right now, I think it's the best time ever to launch a business. Actually, I don't think there's ever a bad time to launch a business. And people are probably thinking I'm nuts, but you know, interest rates, at least in the US, are as low as they've ever been. There are a ton of great quality people that are out of a job or looking to freelance. So you could pick up labor less expensively than you could before this hit. I mean, when times are good, don't rock the boat. You know, I'm not going to look to be innovative and creative. I'm just making a lot of money. Well, I think you should always be looking to make changes, not just wait for this to hit. So this is a wake-up call, I think, for a lot. And the other thing is what businesses can go forward and be successful. In the US, it was crazy last summer. I have a house up in Michigan, and I have a small boat, wakeboard boat, and the guy came out to service the boat, and I said, so how are you guys doing this year? He said, we have sold more boats than we've ever sold in our entire life. 45 boats in one weekend. Now, and RVs in the US, you can't get one. People are buying these things that I thought were capital intensive, and those would not be the businesses that would be successful, but they were. So it's just really taking a look at how your individual business can shift its model or adapt to this trend going forward. It's been very interesting to see things I would not have bet would have been successful are. And of course, all the at-home models, you know, at-home exercising, a lot of these things are going to take off, and I think will sustain after the pandemic is over. So.
Wow, I love it. I just love what you were saying, because I wanted to focus on the discussion on what's going to happen right now, and both you and Troy both said it's just another bump in the road, and so I love it. Yeah, maybe if we continue with this mindset. So Jure, Slovenian companies often have a disadvantage of being in Slovenia, right? So you cannot travel to the States, or maybe you can, but a lot of them cannot travel often to the States, or maybe to India or some other place, because you have to be local there. But right now during the pandemic, that changed because everybody uses Zoom, and it doesn't matter if you're in the next town or in the next continent. That's a bit simplified, but do you see what did this pandemic change for companies, for Slovenian companies with international aspirations? Is it easier for them or not, or how do you see it?
Well, truthfully speaking, I would find it very hard to create, let's say, from my perspective, a sales network in such times, because you know, there are things which are much easier in person. So making strong business relationship is for me similar like falling in love. You know, it can be done remotely, but it's not very efficient. So I would say in this matter, we will have to wait until, let's say, a classical network can be created, but also looking from the people's perspective, from the customer's perspective, their point of view changed. Troy and Bruce, before they mentioned that there are new business opportunities which arise. It's easier to get people for reasonable amount of money, and in times of crisis, if you are brave, if you are financially stable, it's a great opportunity to grow. But what I would also like to emphasize is that when there are stable times, you know, the people's habit, so the customer habit, they are harder to change. But in those times, like today, they had to change. They had to change the mentality. They had to change the way of thinking. And in such times, there are more business opportunities than usual. But we need to be resourceful to take them in the way which are possible. Of course, we can't travel, but we need to replace that by alternative ways. And also the buying habits, they change. So what was before like golden, you know, we are selling measurement equipment which ranges from, I don't know, $10,000 to $1 million per project, and it's hard to sell 1 million project online for sure to a new customer. But I would say in today's world nothing is impossible. So it proves that the change is always there, and we just need to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well put. Thanks. So maybe Jaka, for your question. So I find it. I really like what Bruce and Troy said about the times of opportunity for the entrepreneurs, for the true entrepreneurs. He said. So how do you see this from the Slovenian perspective? Because a lot of companies are just whining and asking government for help and complaining that nothing is possible, or maybe that's unfair for me to say, but how do you see the situation from the Slovenian point of view?
Well, it's a little bit in our nature to complain, and I would say, and I want to don't want to offend anybody, but that generally we rely a lot on what the state, the government should do for us in general. It's not just, you know, speaking about economy or entrepreneurship, in general social welfare. We rely a lot on what somebody else should do for us. So the first thought would be, let's be aware that we are on our own. So meaning that if I am not going to take care of myself, then nobody else will. And having this in mind, one should probably, you know, override all the barriers and limits that we normally put in front of ourselves. I mean, we do it, not somebody else. So yeah, I would agree that there are lots of opportunities, but probably one should, you know, open his or herself for these opportunities, and think, allow himself to go for them, to try them, to try to exploit them. For instance, I'm never thought, but after finishing this meeting, I'm going to Argentina for a meeting. I mean, again on Zoom, of course, but I would never imagine that I would, you know, work for a company in Argentina 1 year ago, but I'm doing some work for them. So and if it happens to me, why it shouldn't happen to anybody else? Well, no big connection. We just met somewhere, exchange ideas, and now we are trying to do something together. So I would say through this Zoom and this kind of quasi personal contact, which it is and it is not, but the world has become even smaller than it used to be, and this is something to explore. So anybody apart from restaurants, which they normally serve food to local people, we cannot export to Argentina or whatever, but a lot of other stuff which is produced, whether services or products, anywhere, can be sold actually anywhere until this courier services work well, but they'll have to follow. A lot of stuff will be delivered through these courier services. Even more, these companies should use this opportunity to improve their services. So I'm not expecting the old normal. I'm expecting some kind of new normal. And I'll say, don't dream about history, dream about the future, which will be different, but changes are here all the time.
Yeah, well put. And I think we'll see many more of them. So we have a couple of questions. Right now, one for Bruce. And so you, as a leader of Entrepreneurship Center, what are the most common issues the young entrepreneurs have when they ask for your help? So this is maybe not just pandemic related, but maybe you decide how to answer it actually.
Well, they want to know how Troy will write them a check.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
They come walking in. I said, well, what's your business idea? Well, I don't really have one yet. And I said, well, you're going to have to put a little more meat on the bone before Troy's going to write you a check. So I'm being a little joking there, but really for most of the students, and we support undergrads, graduate students, and we also support our alumni, because we're in Chicago. We've got about 80,000 alumni. And to be quite honest with you, Andrej, we probably have more luck when an alum comes back and wants help than some of our students. The students, they come out of school with student debt. They might have an idea, but it's just timing wise really hard for them to launch a business, because you do have to have a little bit of capital. I tell them the first round of funding is friends, family, and fools. I hit my dad up for some money when I started my business, and they've got to go through that round. So I really try to get them grounded in that reality. And then, of course, customer discovery is the next big piece. Try to get them to go out. Just because you think that your business is a good idea, you've got to go get some customers actually voting with their pocketbook, and then help them, put together a business plan, and then maybe down the road, get them some angel investment. But I don't want to bring no offense to Troy, I don't want to bring the investors in too early. I really want them to prove their business model, get some cash flow going. And unfortunately in the US, they're watching too much Shark Tank, and they all think, they're a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley. And I'm trying to also ground them a little bit of reality, and also look at more traditional businesses, not just tech startups. And a lot of our students want to start traditional businesses that actually have impact right here in Chicago. And I want to applaud that. I think that's great. So
perfect. Thank you. So I think now the $1 million question is, Troy, what does it take for you to write the check, right? I'm kidding, actually. I think Bruce explained that perfectly. But maybe we have a question for Jure and for Troy. So the best sector of business ideas that you can think of to start a business right now in a new reality, in quotes, of course, or in general. So it's an open question. And Bruce, I think you answered that partially, but Troy and Jure, what do you think about it?
Sure. So I think the best area to start a business is where you see a real problem. And by that, I mean a place where people have real pain and they're going through a lot to try to fix it. A friend of mine once referred to it as, look for the area in the world that has the most duct tape. I don't know if you guys have duct tape in Slovenia, but it's that silver tape we use to fix everything. And if you find duct tape, and I'll use air quotes, where people are hodgepodging together, trying to make things work by using duct tape and bubble gum and putting it together. If you can replace that duct tape with an elegant solution, you're going to win because you know that there is enough need, enough demand that people are willing to live with the duct tape and bubble gum, and you put it together. A good example is Dropbox. We all know Dropbox. It's a great company today. But if you listen to the founder talk about why he started it, he was moving files around on a thumb drive. He had that little USB thumb drive, and he'd copy the files, and then he'd go home and he'd copy them onto his laptop, and then he'd work, and he'd have to remember to copy it and take it to the office. And one weekend he went to Boston for the weekend, and he forgot his thumb drive, and he couldn't do any work. And he said, there's got to be a better way. And he invented Dropbox. And today we take it for granted. I store files in Dropbox. I can get to them anywhere in the world. And it's so elegant and so simple. So I think rather than you're trying to figure out what the best industry is, you should take an area that you know. You should find where the real pain is, identify the pain. And if you solve that pain, you will have a great business.
Perfect. Wow, that's straightforward and clear. Thank you. How about you, Jure?
Yeah, so looking at customer pain is definitely the most important, but I would add also the personal aspect. So I think if you find an area where the customers suffer, but you personally don't really feel passion for that, for that part of the business, I think you should look at other opportunities where you see that the customer require that, but that you would really, in yourself, that you would really love to do and love to solve this issue. And because the business has the upsides, downfalls, and through all this time, this passion will help you to put through the troubles, and then it is a great base of success.
Okay, yeah. So and maybe a follow-up question. So starting a business right now, when it's kind of we're seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, it's not the train, but it's it's the exit. So should an entrepreneur start a business right now, or wait until the end of the pandemic and see what happens then? Maybe the same question for you, Jure, and Troy.
There is no better time to start than right now.
Okay.
I agree 100%. There's so many opportunities, there's so much change, and whenever there's change, there's opportunity. And as Bruce pointed out, interest rates are low. The other thing is opportunity cost. So we see more new businesses started in recessions than any other time. And that's because if you were, if times were going well and you had a great job and you were getting paid well, to go start a business, you'd have to give all that up. But in times when there are recessions and there's financial trouble, you may have been laid off from your job, you may not have great job prospects, and so you don't have to give up as much to put in that time to do the thing you've had passion about and want to do. I think now is the best time to start a business.
Yeah, thank you. I just love the optimism. And while we're on that topic, we have a great question, and it's connected to the fear of failure. And so in Slovenia, we face the fear of failure, and we know that in USA, nobody fears failure. I mean, I'm being sarcastic here a bit, but it's kind of a fairy tale for Slovenian entrepreneurs that, yeah, you have to fail 10 times in the USA so that anyone will take you seriously, right? But in Slovenia, you're branded. So if you fail just once, then everybody knows you're a loser. Can you discuss that maybe you, Troy, and Jaka from a Slovenian American perspective, and how do you see that mentality?
I tend to think about it that every apparent failure is a step to a future success. So I have learned more from my failures than I have from my successes. When you try something and it fails, and I don't mean necessarily an entire business, although I've had a few of those too, but when you try something, you go to market with a product and it doesn't work, you usually find out exactly why it doesn't work. You get that feedback from the customer and you learn from it, which enables you to try the next product, the next version, the next attempt, maybe the next market. And you learn from each one of those, which makes you better. And so I think of what are apparent failures as steps to eventual success.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Jaka, how about you?
Well, I'll refer to Mr. Bart Dwalhofen. He used to be one of the patrons actually here at GEA 20 years ago, probably more. And he was a very successful, so they said, international entrepreneur. And on speeches he was giving, he was only talking about his failures. And his everybody was asking him, well, everybody is showing off, how successful they are. And he was, really telling the story of failures. And he was managing, the temperature of the speech in a way that he went from one failure to worse failure and worse failure. So every next story was worse. And when people were asking, what way are you telling the stories of failure? He said, only from failures people learn, because successful stories are, in the end of the day, they're good, but you want to avoid failures. And I always loved this poster of himself, because it is so realistic. And in Slovenia, yeah, I'm quite convinced that we are too judgmental, and this is why people are fear to fail. So I've always encouraged, successful people, speaking in a classroom or something, tell students whether you failed, whether you made mistakes, and very often people like to do so. So somebody said last time, you only invited me for 1 hour. I should, give a month lecture on my failures. So once we do, promotion on the fact that failure is nothing bad in the end of the day, I think, or I hope that this a traditional thinking will start to improve. But it's absolutely necessary to have more entrepreneurship over here.
Yeah, I really hope that happens too. Thank you, Jaka. So, a question for all of you. So we have around 10 minutes right now, and it's so right now at this point. What do you think? What do you see as the most important skill set an entrepreneur can have or need today to grow and to thrive? Of course, everybody needs to know how to. Everybody needs to be more digital. But what do you see anything special here? So, if somebody would invest their time or efforts into getting a new skill set, what would it be? Bruce,
I've got
start.
Yeah, I've got something I call the 3 Ps that I kind of weave into my classes that I teach my students. First is to have passion for what you're doing. Steve Jobs has got a great YouTube clip where he repeats the fact that starting a business is really, 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 he must repeat really 10 times, really hard. If you don't absolutely love it, why are you doing it? Second, kind of piggybacks what Troy said earlier. I call it purpose, which is basically, finding that problem in the market and solving it. What's getting you out of bed in the morning? What vision are you sharing with your team that moves them beyond themselves? Very purpose driven. And the last is perseverance. That's the 3rd P. You're going to face the headwinds. Yeah, you're going to probably have a few setbacks. I equate failure to lessons learned. I don't think there's an entrepreneur out there that doesn't admit at some point they've failed and learned a lot along the way. And so passion for what you're doing, purpose that you're doing something great, and the perseverance to push through it. And I think those apply in up markets, down markets, across the board. And I think those are some of my keys to success as an entrepreneur going forward.
Thank you. How about specific skills or anything? Or, I mean, you answered broadly enough. So, but is there any special skill that somebody should learn or have right now?
Yeah, listening to your customer. I mean, it's said, but I don't think enough people do it. Everybody's sitting here waiting to respond, but to really empathetically understand and listen to your customer. I always found they'll ultimately tell you the answer you need if you're willing to, be quiet long enough and really understand them, be in their shoes, and listen to them. It's a universal formula that I don't think enough people do.
Listening to customers.
Very well, yeah. I mean, it seems simple, but I don't think people do it enough, right?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Jure. How about you? What do you think is a skill set everybody needs right now?
I would say if I would need to choose one, I would choose flexibility. You know that quite often even entrepreneurs are locked in a specific mindset, which is difficult to change. And I would say in these times, the flexibility to look at other opportunities, to take advantage of them is something I would say.
So flexibility is extremely important. Jaka, how about you?
Well, I would add two pieces from on the top of what Bruce was saying. One is patience. Certain time is needed for anything. Nothing happens over the night. Everybody can, of course, act in the desired direction, but it needs time. So don't expect something will happen too fast. And you've got exercises to train your patience. The others would be persistence. So you know, as we say, you need to kiss a lot of frogs before you turn one into princess, right? So from fairy tales. So try and don't you know don't get too frustrated after the first failure, because more will be coming for sure.
Yeah, we're back at being resistant to failures, right?
Yeah.
Great, Jaka. Thank you, Troy. Troy, how about you?
Yeah, well, Jaka, while I agree with you that things take time, I don't think that means you should be patient. I think you should be impatient. I think that entrepreneurs should have an incredible sense of urgency and trying to solve the problem. And those who have that urgency, I think, tend to be more likely to succeed. Sorry to disagree with you, but I had to throw it out there. So there is one skill that I think I see many entrepreneurs lacking, and this is not a hard skill like data science or product management or coding, but intellectual honesty. You have to be honest with yourself about what is working and what is not working in order to change it and fix it. This is why we have tools like KPIs, key performance indicators. And, you know, I see the entrepreneur who will have a KPI of total number of downloads of my app ever. We call that a vanity metric. It's a cumulative metric. It can only go up and to the right. It can't go down. Oh, look, I'm killing it. I've got a bazillion downloads. But is that what really matters in your business? Or what matters in your business is something around how your customers are engaging with you, how often they are renewing, rebuying. What are the things that really matter? And don't try to whitewash it and make it look beautiful just so that you feel good about yourself, but identify where the problems are. Be intellectually honest with yourself about what's working and what isn't, because that's what allows you to improve. That's what allows you to grow. And I think too many entrepreneurs are too concerned with trying to make everything look good and fail to acknowledge what's actually working and what's actually not working. So intellectual honesty is my number one.
Wow, it's one of my new favorite terms. Thank you very much. So we have a few minutes and we have a few questions unanswered. So I'll be just reading them straight, and please answer them shortly, since we don't want to, since we're already a bit over the time allotted for this event. So Bruce, you mentioned traditional business and their effect on local community. Could you give us a few examples of such businesses?
Yeah, well, one of them, the most impressive one there's a food desert on the south side of Chicago. A food desert here is defined as an area in an underserved community where people can't go get normal groceries, lack of access. And so I had an alum come in and wanted to have impact in that community. So they started a small grocery store on the south side of Chicago that was probably 2 miles from the closest grocery store, which sounds crazy in Chicago, but the city's kind of messed up with regard to poverty lines and so forth. So that was, they didn't need to develop the next app or go to Silicon Valley. They wanted to start a grocery store right here in the heart of Chicago. And once other people found out about it, they ended up with money, they ended up with employees, and they're having a real impact right now. So that's one example.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's really straightforward, and yeah, grocery stores. I agree. It's and for Jure, coworker or employee well-being. Do you have an interesting experience to share in regards to growth in these times? And maybe that's a question for everybody, but I would start with Jure.
Yes, of course. I have a great example. So what is the most important to our co-workers, to our team, is our restaurant. All the restaurants got closed, but we changed everything, that everything is protected, and now the fact that we are serving really great food made a big impact. And if I would close the restaurant or reduce the salary by half, I think closing the restaurant would be the worst thing.
Okay, great. Can I ask? Can you be more specific? Maybe. So you said opening a restaurant for employees, and it sounds great, but I guess there are many entrepreneurs here who don't have the resources or any other means. What other thing you would say is important?
Yeah, I know. I'm telling this in the sort of a metaphor. So I think you should use in all the times. You should use the means that you have. So having a fact that we have this place and that we reorganize that instead of closing is one way of doing that. But in general, I would say that the most important is that you switch your coworkers, your employees, from the mindset of being an employee to being a part of the team, to put them on the profit side, and to give them the feeling that they really belong, that the company belongs to them, and they belong to the company. And this is not straightforward. It's a mosaic of different things, but in general, this feeling is the most important, because in the growing company you can't do stuff on your own. You need to have a dedicated team, and that part, if you are able to achieve that, either having a very small company or having a big company, it's a make or break of the business.
Cool. Thank you. And I know we have a lot to share, but I don't think we can do it right now. I mean, a lot more to share. So Jaka, Bruce, and Troy, do you have anything else to add here? Regarding the employee well-being or coworker well-being?
It is so hard, right? So in normal times, you'd be in the same office with people. You'd walk by them. You'd see if they're depressed. You'd see if they're happy. You'd understand. You'd be able to say, "Hey, it looks like, what's going on? Let's go grab a cup of coffee." And we don't have those opportunities when we're all working isolated at home, and you only see people's smiling face on Zoom. And so it is very important to make sure that you make space and make time for people to A, just talk about stuff, and B, to come if there's a more serious issue. And so one of the things that I like to do is on Zoom calls, when we have meetings, and these are longer, you know, if you have a board meeting or an hour meeting, whatever, the first 5 minutes, just let it be chatter like it would be if you were coming into a conference room. Let everybody talk about, hey, I see you're hanging out in your home. How was your trip up to Michigan, Bruce? And whatever, and have that little chatter so that you make the personal connections so that people feel connected, and you can get a sense for who's doing well and who's not. But we've had some specific things that we've tried to do about mental health and employee well-being with our portfolio companies, bringing in speakers to talk about, you know, what makes things difficult and making sure you make time for yourself. And I believe that everybody, and it's especially true of entrepreneurial leaders who are under great stress, need to make time for themselves. And it's different for everybody. For me, it's exercise. So this morning I had an hour and a half on the bike before I came in. If I get an hour and a half on the bike, I'm going to have a great day every day. That's my time, right? For someone else, it might be reading. For someone else, it might be watching a movie. Everybody has their own thing, but you need to make space for yourself and make sure, just like they say on the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can then help others. You have to make sure that you are in a good mental state so that you can then help others.
Okay, perfect.
I have just one quick thing to add.
Sure, Bruce.
Show appreciation. It's very simple. It's not done that well, especially in this remote time. If your staff is under duress, they're trying to balance their kids learning at home and everything else, you can never show too much appreciation for your coworkers. It makes a big difference, and I don't think we do that enough.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, thank you. That's
I would add, Andrej, some humor. Sure, some humor needs to be kept. I had a great one this morning on the meeting when somebody said, for like initial chat, he said, "Let's not talk about COVID. Let's talk about good old weather." And we were, it was a great intro because we laughed, and the meeting went very well because we talked about weather a little bit, which is changing all the time, but kind of lost its primary role in this basic conversations. So humor is very important to keep us alive.
Yeah, there's a lot of humor about humor on Zoom also. It's so hard to do, actually.
It is.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing. I learned and heard so much from you. So always, so it's about entrepreneurs will just always have challenges, and it's just this set right now is a bit different. And the best time to launch a business is right now. And right now we're having just another bump in the road. I think for me those are the biggest takeaways, but I also got many more. Thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing with us. Yeah, so GEA College, thank you for hosting us, and I'm looking forward to the next event. And thanks to all the participants and for your patience and for all the questions. Have a great evening or have a great work day if you're in the States right now. So bye.
Thank you. Just a quick thank you also on our behalf. Thank you, Andrej, for a great moderation, and of course, thank you, Troy. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Jure, and thank you, Jaka, for all your perspectives, for sharing the experiences. And of course, I can see here also comments. Yes, we will have some women in business as well in the next webinar. So stay tuned. The next module is coming next Tuesday. Again, same time, same place. You all have my contacts, so feel free to apply if you haven't done still. And of course, send us some feedback. What do you feel? How was today's webinar? We will be glad to get your feedback, and of course to know how we can even improve the next webinars. And feel free to join our Facebook community that is connecting all participants. You will get a link in the thank you email, which is going to follow soon after this webinar. So thank you again, all guest speakers. Thank you, Andrej. Thanks to all participants. And of course, goodbye, America, and good night, Slovenia. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Everybody, be safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.